Imagine you're attending a college football game, somewhere in the Midwest. You've spent hundreds of dollars on good seats. Maybe you've even come into town a few days early to soak up the atmosphere. This is a big deal. Football is all about tradition, and there's something beautiful to the ritual. But seated next to you is a man in tactical sunglasses, and he's not having a good time. He's just grimly recording the entire game on his iPhone. That person is a man named Connor Stalions, a former Marine turned Michigan Wolverines football attaché. His job title was defensive analyst, but really, he worked in intelligence. He was a code breaker. The essence of football is trickery. If you know what your opponent's plans are, they can never surprise you. Stalions would buy tickets under his own name. He would make sure he was sitting near the center of the field so he could have a good angle to hold up his phone and film one of the sidelines. Investigators say he did this at least 30 times. He was everywhere, and when he couldn't be somewhere, he paid cronies to film games for him. At one point, a mysterious figure in sunglasses who looked a lot like Stalions was spotted on the Central Michigan sidelines. Football as warfare is usually a lazy metaphor, but here was someone operating as a spy in what he saw as wartime. Now, the theory of this show is that the best way to understand a competitive framework is through its cheating scandals. And this is especially true for college football. Actually, cheating is the only way to do so. As a rule-breaking enthusiast who mostly finds American football boring, college football is a guilty pleasure of mine. It's a morally compromised enterprise at every level that also happens to be extremely fun to watch.
The Mountaineers have just beat the Michigan Wolverines! The Mountaineers of Appalachian State!
How dare you say that about Alabama?
The best programs in the country must necessarily be good both at football and at cheating. More precisely, they have to be good at not getting caught. It's a sport whose rules, structure, and even lore are all built on cheating. But why is the sport so persistently dirty? And why does it remain so widely beloved despite the omnipresence of cheating? What does cheating even mean in a situation like this? Welcome back to Only If You Get Caught, a show about breaking the rules. I'm Patrick Redford. This is the story of one of the most flamboyant cheaters, one of the weirdest coaches, and one of the wildest seasons in modern college football history. It's a story of espionage, skullduggery, disguises, and online forum drama. This is the story of Connor Stalions.
Are you ready to play Cheat Sheet?
Born ready.
Okay, so just as a reminder, you have 1 minute to tell me who cheated, who was cheated, what was the rule broken, who is the arbiter, and what are the stakes. Are you ready?
I'm so ready.
All right, 3, 2, 1, go.
Who cheated? Connor Stalions, who was like a football coach, but really saw himself as like a crusader for holy glory to bring back Michigan to this like past that he only sort of ever knew as like this like mythic background that really defined kind of his whole life. Who was cheated? Their opponents, people who were trying to convey signals to their players on the field that they thought were secret, but were in fact being broken by this like intelligence guy. The rule that was broken, this is like actually interesting. It seems like the rule that was broken is that you can't steal signs. The rule that he really broke is that you can't buy tickets to watch your future opponents play in person. It's like it's sort of like an anti-fun. It's a strange rule. We'll get into it. The arbiter, this is the really interesting part, is that like the NCAA is enforcing this like anti-cheating stuff, but really they are the most like crooked, fraudulent enterprise involved in any of this. What are the stakes? Football is all about like secrecy, and people carry themselves with this like real, it's like very, your playbook is this very sacred thing. There's this real sense of holiness about like running your own stuff and not having anyone know what you're doing. And if you can break the other team's signals, you can like figure out what they're going to do ahead of time, and it gives you this like incredible advantage. That was a minute. That was for sure a minute.
I really thought you were going to do it that time, actually, until you got to that last one. A minute and 25 seconds.
Oh, man, not even close. I'm getting worse at this. I find the Stallion story so instructive because there are so many weird contradictions. What seems at first glance to be a simple story about a strange guy committing an obvious crime only becomes more odd as you pull back. Consider the fact that the Stallions scandal is neither the biggest story from the 2023 Michigan season, nor its first scandal. The Stallions story broke in October, when the Wolverines were flying. And the story of the Michigan season up to that point was one of resilience. They were ranked second in the country, having spent the first half of the season running up the score on a hapless slate of opponents. And they did it with coach Jim Harbaugh watching the start of the season from home, after he voluntarily suspended himself for the first 3 games. Harbaugh is one of our story's 2 main characters. Think of him as a caricature of an all-American football coach. He only wears khakis. He speaks exclusively in cliches about the life-affirming power of competition.
Okay, boys, grab your lunch boxes and go attack this day with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind.
He has a big square jaw, and his face is either set in a guileless smile or a horrified scowl. He's the son of a football coach, and he was a star quarterback throughout his sports playing career, including at Michigan in the 1980s. He is obsessed with milk.
How much milk do I have to drink to be big enough to be quarterback?
Drink as much milk as your little belly can hold. At all times, drink as much milk as could be chocolate milk, could be the 2%, but the ideal is the whole milk. That's the ideal. As much as your little belly can hold.
Harbaugh came back to Michigan in 2015 in hopes of returning the program to its former glory. Now, Michigan used to be one of the most prestigious and reliably great programs in the country, though they'd slipped off that perch by the mid-2010s. While Harbaugh was off coaching elsewhere, Michigan endured its longest conference title drought in decades, and, more importantly, lost most of its games against their dreaded rivals, Ohio State.
Michigan season is over. Ohio State keeps its playoff hopes alive.
Under Harbaugh, Michigan started winning. The milk-fueled Wolverines slowly turned it around. There's not really any other job in sports like college football coach. Great football coaches have to be tacticians, spy masters, and cult leaders, all at the same time. It's not enough to run a smart offense. You also have to recruit good players and manage a staff of 60 or so people. Rosters turn over every 4 years when everyone graduates. So that means you have to keep convincing new groups of high schoolers to join your team year after year. Harbaugh was clearly better than his predecessor right away, but he kept losing to Ohio State. Rumors about him going back to the NFL trailed him every offseason. In 2020, he hit a new low when Michigan went 2-4 during the pandemic-shortened season. But Harbaugh was determined to finish the job. He even took a $4 million pay cut to see things through. When asked about Michigan's new contract offer, he said, "I'm attacking each day with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind, as always. It didn't really mean anything to me. It's just money." The enthusiasm paid off. Michigan had their best season in decades. They even got their revenge when they hosted their rivals, Ohio State. Under an insipid November sky, spitting rain, in the largest stadium in the Western Hemisphere, the gathered thousands formed a writhing wall of maize and navy, screaming for their team. Both teams were ranked in the top 5 in the country, meaning that whoever won would earn the right to play for the national championship. And Michigan won running away. Harbaugh coached a perfect game. He even dodged the celebratory Gatorade bath.
Coach Harbaugh, you're a Michigan man. You've lived this rivalry, you prayed in it, and you just won. You just beat Ohio State. Describe the moment.
I just feel so great for the players who prepared so well for this game and then went out and executed pretty much thoroughly.
One key thing Harbaugh did that year to turn the team around was swap dozens of boomer coaches for young, hungry millennials. This was a new, ambitious Michigan. The staunch traditionalists gave way to a cohort of motivated youngsters with new ideas. Another thing Harbaugh did, according to NCAA compliance officers, was commit a couple of recruiting violations. This is the most common and mundane form of cheating in college football. it also introduces us to this story's villain, the NCAA.
Why does the NCAA exist? Well, to sell a basketball tournament, to codify the rules of basic athletic competition at the college level, and the schools behind them would like to depress the value of labor in order to keep their costs low in running semi-professional teams that are associated with the schools.
Spencer Hall is a college football writer and podcaster and the host of Shutdown Fullcast.
So, and also, I guess, to validate the cost of a massive headquarter in Indianapolis, which should be turned into a laser tag arena. That is what I propose, that we just run it as a big Christian laser tag arena for the good, God-fearing youths of Indiana.
Here's what Harbaugh did. He and his staff hosted 3 recruits in 2021. He took 2 of them out for meals and bought them burgers.
So his recruiting violations followed suit. One of the key elements in the scandal you're talking about is not admitting that it was his signature on a bill for a cheeseburger, right? That I believe he was eating at breakfast.
Yeah, it was like 8 a.m. when this was happening.
Yes, eating a hamburger at breakfast. Because remember, Harbaugh doesn't eat chicken because it's a nervous animal.
That's right.
Yeah.
He uses every part of the cow, so to speak.
Right. This is a grown man who will order milk at a steakhouse.
There's also 3 menu items at the place he was eating named after various members of the Harbaugh family, which I really like as a detail.
Yeah. And he's the kind of guy who would go there like, oh, they got stuff named after us. I'm going to go to that place. Those are good people. Like, yeah, don't galaxy brain Jim Harbaugh here. There you go. That's the whole brain right there. So in terms of what constituted a recruiting violation, it was little things like this. Things that the NCAA can only find, by the way, without the power of subpoena and only with the power of bluffing.
Surely you're asking yourself, why is it a crime to buy someone a nice burger? The short answer to that question is that the NCAA has deemed it so. The longer answer is that the very existence of the NCAA is predicated on its labor force being unpaid. The first A in NCAA might as well stand for amateur. Amateurism is an academic way to justify wage exploitation. It's a front based on a vanishing ideal that competition is pure on its own terms. In this reading, paying players is an original sin, an impurity that opens the sport up to corruption and cheating. College sports are built on amateurism. At some point in the past, you could squint your eyes and see the deal as fair. Athletes got to play for their school in exchange for a scholarship. And if they played a sport with a thriving professional ecosystem, they'd get to market themselves for free. The counter-argument is that everyone involved in college sports besides the athletes was getting rich. In 2024, the NCAA made $1.38 billion in revenue. The highest paid public employee in almost every state in the US is a football or men's basketball coach. And ESPN recently paid almost $8 billion for the right to broadcast the college football playoff. You don't need to be a Marxist to see how gross this is. Getting a free scholarship is cool, but I would feel insulted if my thanks for getting my coach a $12 million contract was a communications degree and 2 bum knees. If I was in that situation, I would also try to get paid. If everyone involved is making all this money, and if their jobs depend on winning dozens of recruiting battles, it is pretty obvious that rules are going to be broken. The history of college football is riddled with scandals that all come down to schools paying players, much like we discussed in the WNBA episode. Every few years, news of such a scandal would break, with the punishment far outstripping the crime. For example, Georgia Tech had to surrender an ACC championship because one of their players was given $312 worth of clothes by the wrong guy. I should note here that media coverage of these scandals has always been heavily skewed against the players. Every scandal sparked a moral panic, one that cast the NCAA as a noble crusader against corruption. This is what I meant when I said that college football is an enterprise built on and defined by cheating. If the sport can only exist at the scale it does because of wage theft, it is inherently compromised. One shocking thing is how the smallest transgressions got punished. The other is the extent to which the NCAA enforced the fiction of amateurism. This brings us finally back to 2023 and helps frame the Connor Stalions scandal. Remember, Harbaugh had to sit out the first 3 games of the 23 season after the NCAA got all mad at him. That is a larger number of games than illicit burgers purchased. But thanks to Harbaugh's newly freshened coaching staff, Michigan didn't miss a beat. On the morning of October 18th, 2023, the Wolverines were 7-0. The Harbaugh suspension didn't harm them, it galvanized them. They were looking forward to whooping on their hapless local rivals Michigan State. But that day, news broke that the NCAA was investigating Michigan for some shenanigans.
New developments tonight in the NCAA investigation of alleged sign stealing by University of Michigan football.
Social media is abuzz about the bizarre accusation involving the U of M staffer who's suspended over that controversy.
7 Action News reporter Brett Cast is in Ann Arbor.
Specifically, the NCAA notified Michigan that someone had tipped them off about a Michigan staffer attending games of future opponents. What were they doing there? Filming the sidelines and stealing the signs transmitted from the coaching staff to the players on the field. Who was doing this? Retired U.S. Marine Corps Captain Connor Stalions. If you're enjoying this episode of Only If You Get Caught and you're wondering how you can support us, the best way to help the show is a 5-star rating and review wherever you're listening right now. If Harbaugh is the caricature of a college football coach, Stalions is a caricature of a die-hard fan. Both of his parents went to Michigan, and he grew up in the Detroit exurbs. He talked constantly about a 15-year plan to restore Michigan to glory, and he maintained a 550-page manifesto in Google Docs. Like many revolutionaries before him, Stalions dedicated his life to recreating a past he never knew. He was only 2 when Michigan won their last national championship. As a teenager, Stalions was posting on Michigan forums, going to a ton of games, and following the team bus to cheer for the players. He went to the Naval Academy specifically as a way to further his goal of coaching Michigan someday. He figured the military was a great place to learn about leadership, given how many coaches had started off in the service. None of them had been Marines, so Stalions thought he could distinguish himself there.
I feel for Connor Stalions in one way, which is this. I think he was in his mid-20s and really driven and didn't have a career. And I think if everyone's been stuck in that, you've had a flailing period where maybe you kind of had half a job, maybe you kind of had half an internship. And then you really started either cutting corners or, just flailing. His side business when he was not working signals intelligence for the Michigan football concern was repairing vacuum cleaners and not doing it well. If you look at his Yelp reviews, they're largely negative. I think he saw this as a mission where he had delusions of grandeur that he would one day coach Michigan. He has a hundreds pages long manifesto about how to organize, run, and execute his plan to bring Michigan back to football greatness. There's a lot of try hard here, a lot of try hard, and a lot of hey, I'm under pressure and I gotta make it or break it. And I think that's part of what contributed to the outlandish lengths that he went to.
He volunteered for the Navy football team, but spent the offseason volunteering for Michigan. Even after Stalions was stationed in San Diego, he continued to fly back and forth. Stalions went as far as buying a house by the Detroit airport and renting it out to make enough money to travel to every Michigan game. He realized then he could save even more money by just sleeping in his car. All this hard work got Stalions a full-time job with Harbaugh's Michigan in 2022. We now know his main job was to steal signs. Or, as he put it on LinkedIn, identifying the opponent's most likely course of action and most dangerous course of action, and identifying and exploiting critical vulnerabilities. Stealing signs is one of the oldest and most well-established forms of cheating in sports. Coaching staffs need to communicate with their players on the field or on the court during games. Problem is, you can't just yell out the play because then your opponents will know what's coming. So you communicate in code. In baseball and basketball, that means hand signals. But the decisions you have to make in football are more complicated and they involve more people, so the code is more complicated. Still, If you analyze what coaches on the sidelines are doing and compare it to what happens on the field, you can break the code, especially if you are applying Marine-style tactics and treating coaching as intelligence work as Stalions was. It would be a mistake to think of what Stalions was doing as isolated. Everyone does this. Michigan even had proof that several Big Ten opponents stole their signs and shared them with each other. Sort of walk me through what that sort of felt like to like when that was breaking, like early 2023.
It felt like the stupidest thing I had ever heard. Because in large part, this is something that every team does. So I have to admit, and even now, I fail to take it seriously. Not that you should take much when it comes to college football seriously, but this less than others, because I think to sum up the Connor Stalions scandal from start to finish, it was one of the few things that felt completely right in reaction was this. It is the most overdone bit of stupidity. Like, it's not just a little stupid. It's a lot of stupid done at a really elaborate level.
Everyone involved in coaching college football knows sign stealing is ubiquitous. Every team has multiple people who try to crack the code. Stalions was probably just bad at tradecraft, hilariously enough. But this sort of spying is part of the game, and smart coaches will account for their signs being stolen. There are stories of coaches leaving fake play sheets in the trash, knowing their opponents will have someone digging through it. Coaching staffs will purposefully let their signs get stolen, only to switch them up at the last second, leaving defenders extra confused. Is good spycraft like part of the game, or do you read that as like a bridge too far? Because it's there for everyone to take. Like you said, it's like fairly, not like simple, but like straightforward, right?
It is. And before you go any further, you need to go, okay, well, did we actually break rules? That's it. Did we break rules of competition? Because that's an integrity of the game question. And that matters for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is that there's a fair amount of money on the line, and people don't really like it when you start messing around with the basic rules that got you that money in the first place. There is a rule, and it is a rule they broke, which is sending scouts to the games of future opponents and using electronic equipment to record another team's signals. That is the rule that they broke. Do other teams do this? No comment. Yeah, they do. They do. But did Michigan go over the line and do so in a visible and often hilarious way to do this? Yeah, they did this. If you don't know, Stalions was in the stands at other teams' games recording blatantly.
50-yard line, whole game holding up an iPhone. Like he was a streamer. Like if you didn't mistake him for anyone else, you'd mistake him for some pirate streamer that you'd see on TikTok, right? So like that's the level of going across that very fine line that they did. They didn't just go like a toe over it. You know, Connor Stalions dove head first. And that's before we even get to going in disguise on the sidelines at Western Michigan, which he definitely did. As I mentioned earlier, one of the stranger things about the Stalions case is that it's not actually against the rules to steal signs, but it is illegal to scout future opponents in person. The idea is that smaller, poorer schools can't afford to send their coaches around the country, so preventing anyone from doing so levels the playing field. That's a bullshit rule. It exists only to be enforced as a mechanism for the NCAA to exercise its control. Stalions resigned his post less than a month after news of the scandal broke. Harbaugh, who maintained his innocence throughout, was given another 3-game suspension. But Michigan wasn't wobbled by the scandal. They were galvanized. They adopted the mantra, Michigan versus everybody, and everybody got smoked. That fall, Harbaugh beat Ohio State for the 3rd year in a row. The Wolverines went on to win the national championship that season, finishing a perfect 15-0. It's the greatest college football season in recent memory, not in spite of the cheating scandal, but because of it. Michigan was penalized for breaking fake rules that everyone else broke, and yet they still won everything there is to win. The final image of their season is of Harbaugh, standing in a daze on the field in Houston, watching the confetti spiral down.
It's pretty great. You know, you watch this confetti come down, it's like thousands of confetti. It tells a story. There's a story in every one of those pieces of confetti to me. Maize and blue confetti Just so proud of our team.
That would also be Harbaugh's final moment as Michigan coach. 8 years after taking the job, he finally accomplished his goal. So he was off. Harbaugh left for the NFL less than a month after winning the national championship. He explained his reasoning in typically strange Harbaugh'ian fashion.
I love Michigan, but I love the NFL too. And there's no Lombardi trophy in college football. And yeah, I got so many sands left in the hourglass, and I want to take a crack at that. And there's nowhere better to do it than with the Los Angeles Chargers.
He also probably left because the real punishment for the Stalions scandal hadn't come down yet. In August 2025, the NCAA finally announced its ruling. Harbaugh was given a 10-year show cause penalty, which was totally symbolic because he coaches in the NFL now. Investigators detailed Stalions' tradecraft, which included him referring to himself as the KGB and throwing his phone into a pond. He was given an 8-year penalty. This story does have a happy ending for Michigan, who didn't have to vacate any victories. Stalions' career in college football is probably over, but the former spymaster has made the rounds. He went on a bunch of podcasts and even appeared in a Netflix documentary about the scandal. Where do we go from here? Does this mean cheating? People aren't going to cheat anymore? Or will the ways I know that's a leading question, but are the ways they're going to cheat necessarily going to have to be different? Where do you see this all going?
They have to be different. They can't be as obvious. Nothing to me will ever beat good old-fashioned sign recognition. That's the human brain. There's somebody on that sideline with a pair of binoculars who's got the right kind of brain to look over and go, oh yeah, they're running counter. They're running counter right, or that's a run right, right? There's another thing here too. What are you doing as a football concern if you are not changing signals, or if you are not using the headset and the radio, if you are not making sure that everybody understands what your signals are without tipping your hand? This is something that people do across sports. They do it all over the place. There's so much to be made of, sure, you might know the call, but are you going to stop it? Okay, you know the call, but what if we just changed our signals? What if you think it's slant flat when really I've just changed it to post curl? There are so many different things you can do that, to me, if you get caught cheating, it also means that it's a double indictment. It goes both ways, because that means there's a rube on the other side, right? Go look at what Connor Stalions actually did and tell me this is an outlandish thought. Okay, you got a lip reader. Okay, but lip reader has to take a look at it, see it, make sure they got it right, translate it down to the headset. That's got to go into the defensive coordinator's headset. That's got to go to the middle linebacker or the safety, whoever's calling plays for you, right? That's got to go in, and that's got to go in under the collegiate play clock. Is that what we're worrying about?
The correct way to read this scandal, and all those like it, is that the NCAA maintains its power by going after any program that succeeds too much. Because success necessarily requires you to break the rules, their job is pretty easy. Everyone is cheating, and anyone can be targeted. The NCAA's ultimate goal is to preserve its disgusting labor dynamic, and this is how they do it. And they won't really be able to do it for that much longer. It's remarkable how much college sports has changed in the last half-decade. The recruiting violations Harbaugh got suspended for aren't even illegal anymore. In 2021, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled against the NCAA in an antitrust case, allowing players to profit off of selling their name, image, and likeness. The NIL ruling was followed closely by relaxed transfer rules. Players could now move around and get paid. In other words, they could now be treated like the professional athletes they already were. Still, the NCAA was basically allowing someone else to solve their problems for them. But a landmark case a few years later broke the NCAA's exploitative model even further. In June 2025, a judge approved a settlement between the NCAA and lawyers representing a bunch of former college athletes. The NCAA agreed to pay $2.8 billion to athletes who competed between 2016 and 2025. Schools will soon be allowed to pay their athletes directly. That doesn't mean everything is solved, nor will the ruling prevent future legal challenges. But the foundation is finally shifting. College football is changing, and maybe for the better. Coaches who excelled under the old system are being replaced by a new group of coaches ready for the new era. And you better believe they're going to find new and more ridiculous ways to cheat and win. Only If You Get Caught is written and hosted by me, Patrick Redford. It's produced by Alex Sujong Laughlin, with production support from Jay Toll Vieira. Editorial support from Tom Lay and Audrey Martovich. Justin Ellis is Defector's projects editor. Mixing by Samantha Gatzik. Show art by Jim Cook. Jasper Wang and Sean Kuhn are Defector's business guys. Thank you to the Defector staff. Defector Media is a collectively owned, subscriber-based media company. Only If You Get Caught is a proud member of Radiotopia.
Radiotopia.